Welcome to Tales from the Bridge. In this episode, Scott Ryan joins us to talk about science fiction film, 90s film, and just film in general, I guess. And he was a fantastic guest to have on the show. This is definitely not the last time you'll hear from him. We're going to have him back for sure because he is a lot of fun. Check out the show notes for links to Scott's work. You'll definitely find that stuff interesting. We hope you enjoy this episode. And remember, if you have not yet subscribed to the show, followed us, left a review, that's a big one. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. We'd really love to hear from you. Please do so. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We really appreciate you joining us today. All right, let's make our way over to the bridge. Scott Ryan is the author of Fire Walk with Me, Your Laura Disappeared, Lost Highway, The Fists of Love, Moonlighting, and Oral History, and many other books. He is the managing editor and creative director of the Blue Rose magazine. Scott is a pop culture historian and expert on the entertainment industry, and he turns to the 90s in his latest book, The Last Decade of Cinema. The book analyzes iconic movies from the 90s, unpacking their cultural impact and lasting legacy. Scott collects vinyl records, is against streaming, and thinks the internet made everything worse. Scott, this is going to be fun. Welcome to the show.
I love that intro. Why don't you also say that I hate puppies and that I'm against ice cream? And then welcome to the show. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. This is going to be a fun conversation. We love talking about everything science fiction, so we're going to go down many rabbit holes here with film in general. So happy to go there.
And this is what's crazy about this. Okay, so I'm gonna just jump right in. I never look at what I'm doing when they set up interviews for me. I just don't do it. So I was just ready to come on here. I looked at I was coming, and then I saw this as sci-fi, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I literally just finished the last episode of Deep Space Nine. I've never seen Deep Space Nine before. Now, do you guys watch? Have you guys seen Star Trek Deep Space Nine?
Yes, definitely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sam?
Yep.
Okay, I absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
I hated all 7 years, 26 times 7. I hated it all the whole way through. I hated the ending and I hated everything. And it's over. And then I see you guys want to talk sci-fi, and I'm like, I need someone to tell me what I missed in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Now, how do you guys feel about it?
I also disliked it. So you're not alone. I don't. We can gang up on Tristan. He loved it. He's a loser. Tristan?
Well, I'm out on a limb because I'm a Star Trek Voyager person. If you would ask me my favorite.
Me too.
Okay.
So I do love Voyager. I like The Next Generation, and I like Deep Space Nine. I really don't understand how you could watch 7 years of a show. How did you do it if you didn't like it?
That's what I hate watching.
Well, the first thing is I love Star Trek. I'm a big Star Trek person. I just want to say that I'm also watching Voyager, and I've not seen it yet. So you can't talk about anything past season 5. Okay, so I'm in season 5 of Voyager. I'm getting through the Rick Berman Star Trek in order. So I started at the beginning of The Next Gen, which I've seen many, many times. The Next Generation is one of my all-time favorite shows forever, like for my life. But I had never watched Voyager, Deep Space Nine, or Enterprise because I ended up having kids and life happened and I just didn't do it. But then I love Strange New Worlds. And I've sort of got back into Star Trek, and I was like, you know what? I'm going back. And so I'm suffering through Deep Space Nine. And so it was hard. But I wish I would have taken notes because I kind of want to write a book called I Think Deep Space Nine Sucks, Convince Me Otherwise, where I interview people that tell me, because I just watched this documentary where they're like, this is the greatest show ever, and it's the best Star Trek. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, I think you could piss off a lot of people by saying something like that. You just did. You just did.
I just did, but I'm not anti, like that's not my style. I don't like to take something and tear it down. But all of my books are kind of about writing because I'm interested in it. And I don't understand how the same people that could write Voyager and Next Gen could write Deep Space Nine. That's so fascinating to me. And that's really what I would want to explore. Not to, I'm going to say maybe I'm wrong. So convince me, tell me why you love Deep Space Nine.
It's not a show that changes anyone's life. It's really it's an episodic escape. And I think that just like most television and film and books as well, it's escapism. And I think that people now I do see why Deep Space Nine can be considered the most boring. The film is actually every episode is more likely to be darker. Like the lighting is actually darker. The story can be darker. It's not as exciting, and they're not exploring either. I've heard that that's a problem for many people that there's no exploration going on with Deep Space Nine, very little. They're just on a space station, and Star Trek should be about exploration. That's one reason why I love Voyager is the story is so simple. They're just trying to get home, and
Right.
they come upon all these adventures on their way. Um, no, I can't argue for why Deep Space Nine is good, besides that I like to escape to that world every once in a while. I do like the characters. I think some of the acting's horrible, some of the writing's horrible, but I think some of the acting's fantastic and some of the writing's fantastic. This is making me think of something, Scott, because you have a quote that I've dug up here. Arguing about films in a video store was our Twitter. It was real, passionate, and sometimes changed our minds. And I like that because sometimes, I mean, with the internet, people get upset over difference of opinion, and I think your opinion is fun to talk about.
Me too.
So
Like I want someone to fight me on this. I love Ronald D. Moore. I love Battlestar Galactica. What a spectacular show. Just like incredible. But he wrote so many of the Deep Space Nine episodes that I hated. That's fascinating to me. How can the same writer write something that I love and something that I don't love? I love that thought. What about you, Sam? What's your opinion of Deep Space Nine?
Well, my problem with Deep Space Nine is Tristan kind of hit upon it is you're waiting for everyone to come to you. You're on a static place, and rather than going out and exploring and seeing new worlds, and like Voyager's this grand road trip, and whereas Deep Space Nine is you don't really get anyone new, and they got to rehash the same characters. So there is the invention and creativity of bringing in new alien life, new ways of living is mostly um, absent from the show, and I think that's the real problem. But I think to your point on Battlestar Galactica, I think we have to realize that writers get better as they write longer, right? And so if something early career versus late career is completely different with someone that you like, I think that's got a lot to do with someone finding their feet in a genre. And so and maybe it takes a little while. It's if you've I used to work in broadcasting, and you couldn't judge a host even in their first season. You got to let them sort of work into it and warm into it. So I think when you have a writer who does something weak early in the career and strong later in the career, and it's in the same genre, I think it comes down to practice.
How do you guys? I'd like to hear what both of you think of Star Trek as a franchise right now in 2024.
I think Strange New Worlds is the best Star Trek, I think, so
Oh,
far.
it's so good. It's
And
incredible.
yeah, and it's changed it for me. I think my opinion has always been that Star Trek makes great TV and terrible film, and that Star Wars is great film, mediocre TV,
Hmm.
generally speaking.
I like that take.
yeah, I don't watch the new ones. I'm sure they're good. I don't all the whenever I put on television shows, I'm actually just watching old television shows. Um, I don't know what it is. I just I'm a this is something Sam's probably heard way too many times, but I like my film when I watch new films, but when it comes to TV shows, I'm watching like Blake Seven. Like I go back and watch that old British BBC series from the 70s, and I like Planet of the Apes, this series from 75.
Hmm.
And I've seen the episodes all multiple times, so I don't know what's wrong with my brain, but I don't take up new stuff. I like all the old Star Trek series from 87 to what was it, 2005 thereabouts. with Enterprise somewhere in there. I'll pick
Hmm.
them up as I go, but
What about Kirk? Would you
I
go back
love,
to original?
yeah, I can put on an old episode of original start the original series anytime. Love it.
For
We
sure.
Yeah.
actually had Robert Duncan McNeil was on our show right around the time
Oh,
when he
wow.
came on. He did every once in a while we do trivia episodes where we have try to get a celebrity on and play trivia with them, and he played along, and it was fantastic. It was a
I
fun
can't
one,
believe
but
you had Tom Paris on your show.
character.
I love this because I'm in the middle of Voyager now. So, like, I love all those characters so much. I think Robert Picardo is the greatest doctor in any Star
Oh
Trek.
yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, I didn't think I would, but I just love him.
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
you realize how appreciative I am that I'm on your show tonight? This
No,
is
this is
like
great.
the conversation I've been waiting to have. I know I'm supposed
Go.
to be talking about 90s films, so we can get there or not. I don't even
Okay.
care.
Well,
But
you know
I
what?
just love it. Thank you
Awesome.
for letting me get this off my chest.
Let's jump over to the last decade of cinema. This is your new book. Tell our listeners about this book and what's inside. What can we find?
It's really hard for me not to talk about Star Trek right now. I just thought how funny it would be if I were to say, well, the thing about Quark is, but see, I'm going to be a professional. Okay. You guys have had Robert Duncan on the show, and I've got to live up to his appearance. So basically, during COVID, I just couldn't find a movie to watch that was new. It just wasn't engaging me at all. But every film that I stumbled upon and I said, hey, when was this made? It just happened to be in the 90s. And that sort of gave me an idea of just kind of looking at what was made in the 90s. And when I did it, I realized that there was variety, and that is what's missing from films from my perspective. Like, I am so sick of superhero movies. I'm so sick of someone not working to solve a problem. And that's that's how all modern movies now. I mean, you're not supposed to speak in generalities anymore, but I really think it's true. And since I'm on a sci-fi podcast, I'm going to give a sci-fi example. In the first Star Wars trilogy, Luke Skywalker works for 3 films to get smart enough, strong enough, and good enough at the Force to fight Darth Vader. Yes, at the end of 2, he has a little skirmish out there, but he loses his his hand. It's not. But in the new one, in the first movie, I can't think of her name. What was her name? You guys will know it. The
Ray.
star,
Ray.
Ray. Ray's fighting in the first one, taking on the bad guy. And she just doesn't even have to learn the force. She's got the force because she was so special that she just doesn't have to work. And that's what all movies are about now. Don't worry about it. You don't have to put any work in. You're blessed and it'll come your way. And that sort of bothers me. So in the 90s book, what I did is I picked 25 films and then I show how they have complex adult and character-based decisions.
So I also love the 90s. I was a young person in the 90s. What aspect of this is nostalgia? And do you think nostalgia gets in the way of making us think these films were greater when really we were just at a time in our lives that we kind of daydream about or wish we could go back to?
So I love this question because I get asked it all the time. And I'm just going to be honest with you. For me, there is zero nostalgia in this. If I had to pick the worst decade of my personal life, it would be the 90s. My life now is a billion times better than it was in the 90s. I am doing what I want to do. I'm just living a glorious life every day. So I am not looking back, like wishing that I was, saying that'll be 50 cents to rewind that at the video store I worked at, making 3.35 an hour, living in my parents' basement. No, I don't really want to go back to that at all. And I really looked at these movies with a now lens. The only one that someone could maybe accuse me of looking at it from a then view is Reality Bites. because that's a movie about Gen X and I'm Gen X. And that movie did really like shock me when I saw it the first time because I had never seen Me on film, which is something that young people today don't have to deal with because everything is marketed to them and has been since the day they were born. But in my generation, they weren't making movies for us, they were making movies for our parents. And Reality Bites was the first one. And then, of course, there was Clerks and Singles and other ones that came out in the 90s. But Reality Bites was the first one I saw. So you could maybe say I have a nostalgic view for that. But everything else, I truly looked at it from a critical 2024 look at comparing why it worked and why it was different and why it was grown up. What about you? How do you look at the 90s?
I'm gonna jump in there because I'm a Gen Xer and I worked in a video store in the '90s as well, like in a sort of alternative. We had all the foreign films and that sort of thing. But you're right.
Right.
Reality Bites was, and I've never had it put into words to me this way, but you're absolutely right. It was the first movie meant for our generation. It wasn't like a look back at World War II or something like that,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
and 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 the soundtracks were
Oh,
were like worth buying, right? Like, the Reality
right.
Bites soundtrack is worth owning, right? And for sure. And you're right. I think this idea the that there was a problem to solve and it might not even get solved, right?
Right. Yeah.
it was a harder world. And so I have to come back to this idea that, like, is this a symptom of the internet and mobile phones, or like that we have kids are like doom scrolling through TikTok, and their attention span is now 30 seconds long, so you have to get everything has to be achieved within the first 10 minutes, right? Like, of a film nowadays. Is this what's gotten us here? Like, what happened in that sort of cultural zeitgeist that had us walk away from that style of the 90s?
So there's two answers to that question because there's kind of two things that you're talking about. As far as how our phones affected us, that has caused characters to, in new movies, they have to say, well, hello, brother, who has the same mother as I do. Of course, we have different fathers, don't we, brother? You would never say that to someone because your brother would know who your parents were. But because they know you're looking at your phone and you might have missed the earlier part, they have to tell you. So you get characters nonstop in movies telling us what the plot is. Or, if you're going to watch Tom Cruise, he's going to say later in the movie, well, I'm going to have to jump off that building or we won't stop the bomb. Oh, you mean the bomb that guy planted because of the war? And just things like that. In the 90s, they knew you weren't looking at your phone. So they didn't have to do that. It could be a little complex. You could even be lost. I watched some of these movies with my daughter who, is like 23, 24, and she would say, well, why are they doing this? And I would say, wait, they're going to tell you. I mean, and you have to wait. You might have to wait 10 minutes. God, can
Yeah,
you imagine? Ooh.
yeah, when you get that, I get that question sometimes from if I'm with my kid or someone younger. I'm like, I know as much as you do. We're gonna find out. There's gonna be a reveal. It's gonna happen.
Right. And it's
But
fun.
yeah, you're right. There is this heavy-handed beating over the head of plot reminder. I had actually never thought of that. That's like, you're kind of blowing my brains out a little bit right now.
I mean the greatest example that I like to use is Law and Order was on for a while and then they took it off and then they brought it back. I don't know if it's still on. The real Law and Order, not, Law and Order FQB or something. And I thought, oh, I used to like Law and Order. I'm going to watch this. And I stopped it after 5 minutes because there was a phone call and then the cop did something. And then he said to his partner, well, I'm the kind of cop who doesn't. And I turned TV off. And my wife said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm not watching a show where a character exclaims their character to me. Like, you don't do that. I didn't say to you guys, I'm the kind of guy that's going to take your podcast over. I just took it over and talked about Deep Space Nine. Like in real life, we don't explain ourselves. And I can't watch something that does it. And it's because I grew up watching these films in this book. I was lost in Pulp Fiction the first time I saw it, gloriously lost. And then I was found, and then I kept going back to it because I want to be lost. It's okay if you don't understand. You're going to be just fine.
Well, let's try and figure this out a little bit. Are we getting more stupid as an audience, or like is that why the writing's getting dumbed down? What do you think's happening?
I don't think we're stupid. I really don't. Because when people make something good, they'll follow it and they love it and everyone will go crazy for it. It just is happening less and less because movies cost so much and it's hard to make that money back that they don't want to take the risk. I quote Martin Scorsese in the front part of my book as saying, there are no risks in a superhero movie. And it's true. Like there's not a risk. Nobody's really saying, I don't know, Spider-Man 14 is going to work. And someone can say, yeah, but Spider-Man 16 didn't make as much as Spider-Man 14. Yeah, but they made it up because once 17 came out, everyone streamed it again and it happened. So there just isn't a risk. But in making, Malcolm X, let's say, they put a lot of money into that and they got to pay for Denzel and it's 3 hours and 20 minutes and there was a risk. And then there's a reward for taking that risk because it had something to say and it was important.
I could see where that scares people into their corners or scares creatives underground, right? Like I don't want to take a risk. And it makes me wonder do you see hope? Do you see a path or some way back to the sort of creative risks that we saw in the 90s, that we saw back in that last decade of cinema?
You're asking me if I see hope?
Yeah.
No. Didn't I just say I was Gen X, please? I don't because I think the thing is, and I certainly don't get into this in my book because I'm not smart enough to say why, but for some reason, it's the same system that's working now was working in the 90s. It's just that in the 90s, the way you made a lot of money was to do something no one had seen before because that's what everyone wanted. And now everybody wants to see what they've seen before as an animated film, then as a musical, then reimagine it as a live action again, and then reimagine it, with paper clips playing each part because they know the plot. We just want to see what we have already seen before, and that's what's making money. I don't know why in the 90s. I have no idea. There's nothing that I could really find in doing my research that explained why. But in 1994, the top 10 grossing films were all 10 original ideas, not one of them a sequel, not one of them an IP, none of them. And in 2024, I just looked, eight out of the top 10 are sequels or IPs. I mean, it's what people want to see now. They want to see what I've seen.
I'm wondering now, like if you had to pick two or three ideal movies from the 90s, what would they be and why?
I mean, I think when you're looking at the 90s, you have to start at Pulp Fiction. I mean, Pulp Fiction changed everything. And in my book, I say there's before Pulp Fiction and there's after Pulp Fiction. And you can feel it in the movies that came after. And it was all because of Quentin and his writing and telling it out of order and telling it out of order with a purpose. Um, for me, it's Magnolia. Have either of you seen Magnolia?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh, that's the movie I end my book on, and to me, it's the pinnacle of the 90s. It brings everything that the 90s had to offer because by then it came out in 99 and you were getting real celebrities. Like, it's just celebrity packed. So it's like a Hollywood film, but it's actually this small independent film that probably cost, $100 million to make, which was a ton back then. It's just like a huge movie. So I think Magnolia is incredible, but I will say that was one of the ones that I showed my daughter. And it has, a great ending, a great last shot that I won't spoil for people who haven't seen it. And it just sort of lands on me, and I'm like, oh, I'm just sort of reacting. Then I look over, and my daughter was already on her phone. She was already, she was already scrolling, and I thought, oh yeah, there's no reason to have a Magnolia because why would you want to be away from your phone for 3 hours and 8 minutes?
Something, and let me just give you a little bit of a story here. It's April 1999. What film did I go see in the theater? Can you guys remember what was the big movie in April 1999? A month
Hmm.
before Phantom Menace. It was The Matrix. So
Oh, The Matrix. Okay.
So The
Hmm.
Matrix came out in 99. My brother and myself went to go see it. Mind's blown. 16-year-old kid. That's just the perfect film. And then
Heck
Star
yeah.
Wars, which we had been excited for our entire lives, came out and was like, what the hell was that? Um, The Matrix was the movie that we wanted Star Wars to be, but Star Wars came out and was for kids, and it was like, well, we had our Star Wars as kids. Like, where's our big kid Star Wars or adult Star Wars? And that's what The Matrix was. Um, what do you think of The Matrix? And did that take us into the digital age, or do you think that film is dated now? How do you feel about The Matrix?
I actually don't think that it's dated, because I think it was so ahead of its time that it's made it. Like, it's sort of weird how films can do that. There's what's that horrible movie with Sandra Bullock, The Net, and where they were trying to put it right in that time, and that's bad. But The Matrix was enough sci-fi that I feel like it still has that sci-fi feeling, I think. And, you just think about taking the pill, not taking the pill. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't matter. The special effects doesn't matter. It's what would you do in that situation? How do you feel? Um, the Phantom Menace and George Lucas doesn't come off great in my book. He takes some blows, but I figured he's gonna be all right because he's got the money. But I mean, the Phantom Menace, like, it's a big
Yeah,
reason why it all came to an end. I
yeah,
mean,
it really is.
because The Matrix had a story, and that's the thing. Like, and I try to point that out in my book. I'm not against special effects, but that can't be all. You've got to have a story that backs up that. I mean, Jar Jar Binks is not a story that we're happy about these special effects for it. No.
So you would say that writing is overshadowed by cartoon? Is that or special effects? Do you think that they're so focused on making it look good that they don't know how to make it sound good and feel good?
Well, what I did a little bit of research, and I came across this article, and that's what I write about in my introduction, where George Lucas slipped one digital shot into the Phantom Menace. The rest of it is shot on 35 millimeter. He's never said what the one shot is, but people have guessed. And it worked, and no one noticed. He wondered if people would be like, what the hell was that? But nobody noticed. So he told theaters that by 2002, they had to have digital projectors in their theater or they couldn't show Attack of the Clones. So every theater everywhere had 3 years to take the money to buy a digital projector. And what do you think they did with their 35 millimeter projector? They chucked it out the back of the theater. And then what do you think they wanted? Do you think they wanted more movies like The Ice Storm or The Prince of Tides? No, they wanted more Jar Jar Binks. And you said, that's what I thought was interesting. You said The Return of the King was 2003 or 5, right? So they
Three,
knew
yeah.
they had a digital projector to play them on. That's what they wanted was digital things. And it was all George Lucas's fault. So I think it's interesting that he took such a giant leap with technology in 77 and then makes Lucas or Skywalker and all that. which does all this sound stuff. But then he pushes us to the digital, and 35 millimeter is gone. And when there's not film, are these even films anymore? Which I actually did find articles wondering if you could even call it a film if it was done on a digital projector and a digital film, which is so funny now because that's what everything is.
I do feel like there is a kind of nostalgia for analog special effects again. Like I do feel like you're starting to see creature effects come back into play a little bit more, and people kind of make a point of it. Oh well, I wanted the directors would be like, oh, I wanted to have this sort of realistic feel, and there's sort of a nostalgia. But do you think there's a potential of that nostalgia acting in the same way that maybe vinyl has had a return, and that we could see a return of actual film to the theater?
Well, going back to Star Trek, I was really surprised that the Gorn are puppets. I don't know if you've watched any of the bonus stuff on Strange New Worlds, but those are all puppets.
No, I didn't know that. No, at all. Like,
And I was like, holy crap. And I wondered, I am a little more afraid of the Gorn than I am of other things. And it's because those actors are right there, and the actors say they're scared of the puppets. Like they forget that they're puppets. And they're right there, and they show you the footage and how good it is. So I think you're right. That is coming back. Film is never coming back. It's too expensive. They're gonna let Quentin Tarantino and Spielberg and Scorsese finish out their career on 35, but no kid is gonna start and get a break on some interesting script and get the budget for 35 millimeter. I just don't see it happening.
And Christopher Nolan, he still films, but something neat
Right.
about Christopher Nolan is he films on 35 or 70 and he can make a science fiction movie out of that.
But he's also from the 90s, right?
With the
Isn't Memento?
following and Memento, yeah.
yeah,
Memento
So,
might be 2000, but the
oh,
following.
yeah,
yeah.
it is. Yeah, you're
He's
right. It
still
is.
one of us, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But
So
I
so
don't know that
film.
young people would.
no.
Hmm. So and I want to know about Christopher Nolan. Do you feel you like his films? You like what he's doing? Because you don't.
I actually don't.
Oh no, I think we got to end this now. Okay.
I wouldn't blame you. It's just I don't know. I liked Memento, and I liked the first Batman. Then I sort of got over superheroes. But there's something about him that's just a little cold. I feel the same way about the director of Seven. Who's that? Fincher.
David
What's his
Fincher,
name?
yeah.
David Fincher. They remind me, they're so similar where they're great.
Hmm.
I'm not saying Christopher Nolan isn't spectacular. He's a great director. But there's something cold about his films that never really let me in. That's what I
Yeah,
would
I
say.
kind of
There's a coldness that Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't have.
yeah, I kind of see that.
That's my thing. I love him. I'm not saying he's not great, but is any of his films my favorite? No. Can I stay or we're done? I'm out.
We're done. See ya.
Yeah,
Thanks for listening. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not actually a
Um,
huge fan of Nolan either, so I don't mind. I think we share some of the same tastes there, Scott. But yeah, I do. I think you're right. Cold is the right way to put it. There is a you don't feel welcome, or at least I don't.
And like David Fincher's a great director. I mean, he's made some great films, but I don't know. There's just something like you guys mentioned being Spielberg fans. Like you would never call Spielberg cold. Like he's
no.
always letting you in. He's saying, this is this world. Come here. Take my hand. I'm going to tell you a story. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's how I
No,
feel. It's just a
I do
feeling.
completely.
Yeah.
I get a little bit of warmth from, and if we're going hot and cold here, I do get a little bit of warmth from Interstellar, that parent-child relationship. But I no, overall, I hear you with the cold. I can sense that, and Tenet very cold. There's nothing. You're not warming up to anyone there. And I like how you just described Spielberg. Take my hand, let me tell you a story.
I mean, to me, that's Spielberg all the way, especially in the
Yeah,
70s and 80s.
yeah, especially. But I will say, perhaps you disagree, but I do like AI very much, and I also
Mhm.
loved Minority Report. I think it's one of the most fantastic science fiction films, and that was 2002.
Yeah, Minority Report is really good. I will say that his last movie I hated so badly. The one about him as a director, as a little kid. What was that called? The
The
one he just did.
Fablemans.
The Fablemans.
I love that film. You didn't
Okay,
like that?
I didn't just, it's not that I didn't like it. I truly hated it. And
Oh
I
my
and
God.
I, I'll tell you why. When I was Spielberg's age, I also made movies and I showed them to my friends. When I was a little kid, I'd get my neighbor people in. And actually I kind of still do this. But I get people to be in movies. Nobody ever put me on their shoulder and took me around town saying he's the greatest and stand up and clap. They didn't even realize I did all the work that it took to do it. They
Yeah,
just thought it fell out. And it was just such a view. I was like, I kind of lived that life. And like when he showed it at school and everyone was like, yay, we love him. That's not, it just didn't, that movie
it didn't hit
really
for you.
pissed me off.
It's funny that you said that because I was thinking the other day, I was like, fuck, I love the Fablemans. I think I might want to watch that again.
It's a great last shot. And
Oh yeah,
Lynch
when
is
he's going
great in
down
it.
the st and yeah, David Lynch as John Ford?
Yeah.
No, is it John
Yeah.
Ford? Yeah.
Yeah, it's John Ford. Yeah.
It's the mass approval daydream we all had growing up. That's why
Right.
you like it, Tristan.
Yeah.
You want us to carry you on our shoulders and
Right. It's
applaud
just,
you
but
for
no
some.
one's ever carried me on my shoulders. So I thought, screw that guy. I just wish he struggled a little bit. But then I was also thinking he was Steven Spielberg and I was Scott Ryan. So maybe we had different paths. Maybe
Yeah.
his movies were better than mine were. But I still think regular people don't know what a director does. And it made it seem like they all really got it. And I thought, I don't know.
Well,
Feel
we don't want to take up too much of your time, so
yeah,
we're gonna make our exit. You tell
okay,
us,
yeah.
like, let's take us out on a positive, upbeat, hot take on anything you want. Star Trek,
Oh my
90s.
gosh. And I
What do
just
we
real
like?
I don't think I'm gonna do it because
Hook.
I just realized I hated Deep Space Nine too, and I might as well just go out as a grumpy old man because that's really what I came here for. Um,
So Hook was a fantastic film, right?
I loved it. Oh, Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell was like the greatest performance of all. No, what are we kidding me? Come on. Oh, that's horrible. Actually, my favorite Spielberg, well, it's E.T. I mean, E.T.'s maybe one of the best movies ever, but I love Always. I actually think Always is really underrated for Spielberg.
Really?
I
That's
do.
a
I think
film
it's a good
Really?
love story.
I hadn't thought of that movie since I saw it,
I love
and
Holly Hunter. She's one of my
yeah,
favorites. So
Yeah, she's good.
I think it's kind of a nice love story. It's just, I like it. So there we go. I
nice.
liked something that you
That is a
guys
hot
were
take.
lukewarm about.
That's a hot take for someone to say, "What's your favorite Spielberg?" Always.
It's really E.T. I mean, I honestly believe you could say that E.T. is the greatest movie ever made. Like it's up there with Casablanca or Gone with the Wind or whatever. Like it's a perfect film.
Yeah.
Um, so it would have to be E.T. But after E.T., it would be Always. There we go. I liked something they didn't. Thank the Lord.
Well, actually, I
God.
want to get very
Oh,
quickly as a postscript. Can I get your take on Taika Waititi? Um, because and it sort of you brought him to mind because I remember watching Jojo Rabbit and going, "That is a near perfect film." I thought it was fantastic. But then going to see Ragnarok, and go, "Oh shit, I don't know what's happening here." Not, what was the yeah? I mean, they're on the unicorn rainbow thing, right? Like, and
That was the second one he did. Not
that was that.
Ragnarok was not too bad.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. So I was like, wow, okay.
Jojo Rabbit. I'm glad you said that. That probably was the last movie that I loved. And it really was a 90s movie. I mean, you're bringing in Hitler to be this
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
this goofball, and they don't even care, and they're not even worried about being canceled. They don't care if you're mad. Um, that really was a 90s film, and I loved it. Like I was totally in. Like I
Yeah.
bought everything from beginning to end, and I was like, yeah, because I don't walk into a movie trying to judge it or hate it. I want you to push my buttons a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought it up because that probably is the last movie that I really felt was a good old-fashioned 90s movie.
Hmm.
There's no way that guy doesn't love 90s films.
I think you're right.
Well, he's calling back for sure. And he
Uh,
actually did the new Time Bandits series, which apparently was not very good. I did not watch that.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't.
but I love the original, the Time Bandits, and
Yeah.
that does make me want to ask your quick opinion on Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys, which was a 90s science fiction film. Did you like that one?
I did like that one, and I'm a huge Bruce Willis fan from back in the day. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't say the back half of his career is what it should have been. But yeah, and the Fisher King as well. Isn't
Oh,
that
I
Terry
love
Gilliam as
Fisher
too?
King. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
got an element of fantasy in there too, right?
Yeah.
It's just a little bit off, yeah.
Yeah. See, I like anything that's a little off. That's why David Lynch is one of my favorites. Like I want to be pushed a little bit and want to be out in that way. So no, I love 12 Monkeys.
So I've got a great way to go out here, and that's just by me making a statement that everyone's going to agree with. David Lynch's Dune was far better than Villeneuve's Dune.
I didn't even watch the new one because I was like, I'm all in on David Lynch. I know
There you
and then
go.
everyone kept telling me, you gotta. And I'm like,
Don't worry about it.
David Lynch is my bread and butter, friends. I'm
Yeah.
not taking this path. I got my own
The
David Lynch.
the new Dune films, they look nice, they sound nice, they're fine, they're acted well, they're great, epic. And I'm going to say quote unquote epic because they're not actually epic. They just have a gigantic budget. But no, David Lynch's Dune uh, completely. And anyone who argues that
He's young.
doesn't know what they're talking about.
Well, I had so much fun. Thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
having me. I'm sorry that I was worked up in the beginning. You caught me on a day.
Yeah, I think we got you on the right day. No worries.
You
That's
really
perfect.
did. I feel like this was a therapy session. Like I really needed this outpouring of sci-fi because I just did. So thank you. I'll send me the bill and I'll take care of it.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Scott, for joining us. That was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it. On Tales from the Bridge, we have tons of other episodes coming your way. Interviews with authors, science fiction books, sci-fi film. We're going to do it all. Thank you again. Until next time.